Hello, innovators. I'm Todd Wyant, and welcome to the Bridging the Gap podcast presented by Applied Software Great Tech Group. You're invited to join our conversation to model the future of construction innovation and the digital transformation adventure of this great industry. My guest today is Aaron Henderson. As Product Marketing Manager for Stack Construction Technology, Aaron is on a mission to help contracting organizations leverage technology to increase efficiency and minimize risk at scale. Throughout his career, Aaron has worked with top AEC industry leaders to streamline systems and processes and develop strategies for more effective growth. Welcome to the show, Aaron.
Hey, Todd. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. Looking forward to it. So let's start with kind of your origin story, if you will. How'd you get into the construction industry?
Yeah, so probably a little different than most. So I actually came out of school with a construction management degree and a business management degree, and honestly wasn't really sure if they would cross over totally, but ultimately they kind of have. So I came out of school, worked for a small consulting firm that actually focused on the trades. So we worked with architects, engineers, contractors, really all over the country. Primarily focused on operational efficiency and business strategy. So kind of cool that I was able to leverage both those degrees together to some regard.
Yeah, absolutely. So when you came out of school, you had both background there. Were you specifically looking for a construction firm that you could tap into both, or was that just happenstance?
It really wasn't. It was more happenstance. So super interested in construction and had the construction management degree and was going down that path. But my real passion is probably more the business side of construction than it necessarily was like out in the field. And I think I kind of discovered that as I was going through. But really, it was cool that it all kind of came together. There aren't a lot of consulting firms that focus on the trades. So the fact that I kind of got partnered up with one and was able to leverage both sides of it was a pretty cool thing.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
What are some pitfalls that we'll start on the negative side, then we'll move over to the positive.
Yeah.
What are some pitfalls that you see, especially trade contractors, really falling into when it comes to operational efficiency and how they set up the business practice?
I think whether it's trades or the GCs or even when you go over to the design side with the architects and engineers, I think as an industry, we all hear constantly how much we lag in technology adoption and those kinds of things. I think the biggest thing for me is I see a lot in our industry is kind of this is the way that we do things here kind of mentality. And I think we all run into that.
My favorite line.
Yeah. I think I like to think that it's shifting pretty dramatically and pretty fast. But I think, especially when I came into the industry, I came in, that like 2007, 2008 kind of time realm. So it was an interesting time to come into the industry. But, just in the last 10, 15 years, I think that's really started to change a lot as the new generation has started to come in. But you still hear a little bit of it. And so, we still do things probably, paper processes and leverage Microsoft Excel maybe a little bit more than we should, or maybe more than other industries do. So, it puts us in a really kind of cool position, though, I think, where we can sort of look at those other industries and see the things that they've done where they were really successful and maybe where they weren't, and leverage some of those lessons learned too, as we kind of try to push the construction forward. So,
yeah. So you brought up the old kind of adage of construction's slow to adopt. How accurate do you think that is in today's current state of construction?
Like I said, I think it's getting better. We continually reference the McKinsey report that I think everybody's like overly familiar with,
right?
Where we fall in comparison to all these other industries. I like to think that's getting better. I'd love to see it redone. I don't know if that's been updated here, recently or not. I'd like to think that we've maybe moved up that ladder a little bit, or that we're starting to. I think we're starting to see some cool stuff, though. I think there tends to be more investment in construction technology and those kinds of things. And I think where there's investment, things tend to move a little bit faster. So I think a lot of the venture capital firms, the big VCs, some of those folks were a little slow, a little reluctant to jump into construction tech. But as they have, I think it's started to push things forward. I think, again, as we've had kind of a new generation and kind of this new these new individuals that are coming into the industry too, they've kind of helped to propel things. So I like to think it's getting better.
Yeah. I like to think so as well too, especially over the the last 3 years. I mean, I'm well aware that I'm in a technology and innovation bubble here, but I feel like the last 3 years have seen just a huge spike in adoption because I mean, people had to. Necessity breeds action. But from your side, what have you seen over the last couple of years there on that front?
Yeah, I mean, I think in a way, I mean, I think not to talk too much about COVID and what impact COVID kind of had on all of us, but I think especially for laggard industries, and I think we do tend to lag still just a little bit, and I do think that's getting better. But I think COVID forced a lot of us to quickly adopt technology and have to kind of shift in ways that we weren't, maybe shifting before. So, I think just little things like, I know one of the big things for me was Zoom calls. And it was like, I used to get on Zoom calls constantly, and it was, people struggled to connect and didn't know how to use it. And what are we doing? And I can't figure out how to turn on my camera. And it was like weeks. And then all of a sudden everybody knew how to do that. And it was little things like that where we started to realize like, hey, this technology thing isn't so crazy. It's not so out there. Hey, we need it, a little bit more. And I think, what is it like the whole thing of like need, necessitates innovation or something like that, or, whatever it is. So yeah, I think the last 3 years, especially, we've seen really, really big shifts just because of that with, companies going more remote and needing to communicate. And I think too, that sort of led us to this place where in order to continue to recruit top talent and those kinds of things, we've had to learn how to be a little bit more flexible. I think too, I keep saying the new generation, but I think the new generation is, they're requesting these things. I think like when they go into companies and they see, old methods, old ways of doing things, I think technology is kind of a recruiting tool now also. And so, I think that's become a big thing as well.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So Amy Marks she talks about the expected experience of in our personal life and bringing that into construction. Yeah. I love that phrase because it's so true. I feel like in construction, we tend to accept things that we would never accept in our personal life of like how we order. We go on Amazon and we expect it to be there, sometimes that day, at most 2 days, and we're whining that we have to wait 2 days, but we can have everything exactly spec'd perfectly how we want it. And then we come to construction and we're like, oh no, we have to wait months in order to get that information. And maybe we get the kind of in the ballpark, but it'll probably be wrong.
Yeah.
We would never, that would be a bad review in a heartbeat.
It's completely true. And I think the biggest ones that we see, I mean, we compete pretty regularly with some, what I would consider fairly legacy type softwares and things like that. And it's just the user experience, right? Like the experience that we expect from software and technology. And we all use, our iPhones, our everything else that we've expect this like super high end experience from. And then in our day to day in construction, all of a sudden we accept these things that were like commonplace in the 1990s. And it just doesn't happen anywhere else in our life.
Yeah. Well, what do you think about, what is it about construction that accepts that kind of mentality of it? Or are we jaded that if we come and think it's not going to change and we've been slower? Or what do you think makes that, accept it more than maybe other industries?
Yeah, I don't know. I think there's an element of, there's kind of, I mean, it's the mentality thing. I think we tend to be a pretty strong male dominated industry as a whole, and I think that's been the way it's been. And I think we also, just like we don't see really strong technology adoption, we don't see a lot of diversity within construction. And I think there's kind of this like really strong, my way is the best way kind of a mentality that we've historically had. And I see that shifting quite a bit. I mean, Women in Construction Week, and as we've had more diversity and we see more inclusion and things like that, I think we've also seen a shift sort of in our mindset, hopefully. It's kind of allowed us to be a little bit more open. One of the concepts that I hear a lot more is I think we've always been afraid of failure, right? Like that's it's
a bad 4-letter word.
It is. And, I've seen more and more, whether it's LinkedIn or wherever it is, just conversations and probably your podcast as well, but people are being more open to the idea of it's okay to fail. And I think as we're get more okay with that and more okay with making mistakes and those kinds of things, I think that leads us to innovation a little bit, right? Like if we're afraid to fail, we're going to be afraid to take on new things and try new things. And I think as we continue to have that conversation and we talk more about it's okay to try things and to fail and to move on and to, that it's part of the process. I think those things will help to expedite innovation and technology and kind of change the industry as fast as anything has.
Yeah. More than agree with that. I think that it's a reframing of a failure that's your biggest learning growth and potential there. If you're honestly taking the time to kind of reflect and think back and comb through of, all right, why did it not work? You can learn so much and grow so much and get more efficient by having that kind of process. But so kind of in that vein, what are some ways that you found that every company can kind of create those operational efficiencies, and then how do they know that they've arrived and they've achieved that goal?
Yeah, I think I think the first thing is trying to understand. It's almost auditing, sort of like how do we make money? What is sort of our process? Like what do we do as a business? And I think as we start to sort of lay that out, like what is our workflow essentially from, project conception clear through to closing out the project and the maintenance of the project. And then starting to identify where are places that we're not being as efficient as we could be. A lot of people I know talk about the handoffs, and it's the handoff from design to the pre-con team and from pre-con to construction. There's a lot of things that we tend to lose in those areas. So I think a lot of it's just, whether it's on paper or if it's using a software, whatever it is, it's kind of laying out what is our overall company workflow? What do we do? And then starting to identify where are areas where we can be more efficient, more effective. Where are we losing things? I think that's the first step for anybody. I think at the end of the day is, you said, what's the goal or how do we know we're being effective with it is one, defining the goal. What are we trying to do? Where are we trying to be? Right. And right. I think, trying to come up with the metrics and everything that we need to have ultimately to kind of back into that, I think is the only way to really know if we're making progress or not.
Yeah. When does technology come into that conversation?
I think sometimes it's not as early maybe as people think. I think there's this element of we have to understand what the process is first, right? We see a lot in technology. You probably see this too, where there can be an element of sort of adopting technology just to adopt the technology. And that's not necessarily the place to start. The place to start is understanding where do we have a problem, and is there a technology ultimately that can help us with that problem? And I think that's it. I mean, I think for me, it's technology to solve business problems or business issues, not just technology for technology's sake.
Right. Yeah. Preach. I think people get distracted with the shiny object syndrome. Yeah. They're like, well, that person over there is using this technology and they're doing great, so we must have to adopt it as well too. Yeah. Well, you may not have the problem that they had that they're trying to solve.
I think that's exactly it, man. I think there's so much of like the Me Too kind of thing. Like we see this over here and those people are doing that and we have to do that. I don't think it's always the case. We're unique for a reason. Like we have our own way of doing business. And so, our tech stack may be a little bit different than the direct competitors. And I think that's okay.
Yeah, absolutely. Are there certain kind of things from a business side that you have found need to be in place before the technology conversation comes into place as well?
Yeah, I think it's kind of where, what I've said a few times already probably is like, we have to understand like our way of doing business before we can find the technology kind of that fits into it. I think just understanding who we're trying to be as a company, where we're trying to be, what our position is. We can't say that we're an innovative company if we're not willing to innovate. So I think just understanding who we are, what our purpose, what our mission is, what our goal is as a business, the type of people we want to attract. I think the more we can kind of understand those things, then we can kind of back into our way of working and ultimately the technologies that kind of go along with it.
Mm-hmm. Curious from your thoughts, who should have a seat at that table for the technology conversation and the business process and really kind of doing that kind of self-audit, if you will, of where they stand?
It's ultimately everybody, right? At some point, hopefully everybody has somewhat of a say. I think one of my favorite things about the technology side of our business, though, is for me, it's the place where I see young leaders be able to have a seat at the table the earliest. And so, I think we're all struggling with the skilled labor shortage, and we're struggling to get young people into our industry. And so I think it's a great opportunity to pull in the young folks within our organizations and ask them and see where their peers are going and the industries that their peers are interested in, and what they're seeing and what they expect. I think that's an awesome opportunity to start to see the young people have a seat and be able to have some impact pretty early in their careers. But at the same time, we do still have to know that we may have, more seasoned superintendents out in the field and project managers and these guys that ultimately we have to cater to them as well. We have to understand what they need and make sure that we kind of bridge the gap between those two things for sure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Bonus points for
I know
working the name in there. I totally agree on both of those. I love that you started with everybody, because I agree. I think a mistake that a lot of companies make is they outsource it to the technology department, and then they don't bring anybody else in, and then they wonder why people are like, well, this doesn't do anything that we actually care about, or they're not bought into what the new system is going to be. And so it totally bombs. Even if the technology is great, it bombs because nobody's bought in. So you got to work to get that cultural buy-in to the technology.
And you're absolutely right. It is where it goes probably way too often in our industry is what's the IT department say, or, what do our IT consultants say? And I think that's probably the last place I'd like to see it start, right? Is like, I want us to understand a little bit internally kind of who we are, what we need, and hopefully have more of a say than just the IT department, ideally. So,
yeah, no, I agree. I think it should start almost in all cases with the field and what's actually going on, of where is your actual pain point and why is that a pain point?
Yeah.
And then try to work backwards to solve it.
Yeah.
And then by doing that, you're getting their buy-in, you're getting the right software that's going to actually address the pain points. And you're going to discover a lot of stuff along the way too, of like, oh, well, we actually already have a solution for that pain point. If that's your biggest pain point, we're good. We don't have to spend anything. We just have to implement this.
Exactly. No, I think that's exactly it. And I think generating buy-in throughout that process, right, is always the toughest thing. And I think a lot of generating buy-in is just making sure we really take time to listen to people, understand what problems they're facing, hear them, and apply what they're actually saying to the solutions that we bring. So, I think if we can just change that, how we generate buy-in thing a little bit, that'd make a big difference.
Yeah. So kind of pivoting the conversation a bit, where do you see AI really kind of coming in and helping to change the game in construction?
It's coming fast, right? I think if 6 months ago, that may not be like the hot topic or the thing that immediately comes up. It might be more a general technology conversation, but I know the Chat GPT thing has been like just the biggest thing to really bring AI to the forefront. We're seeing it a ton. So at Stack, we do a lot with pre-construction and the construction phase. And we're seeing a ton. It's amazing the amount of kind of the front end of pre-construction and things where AI can have a huge impact. So I think it's absolutely the future of where we're going. And I think, the more training data and the more information that's available and the more these technologies start to come up. I know we've started to use ChatGPT just around the office, and it's absolutely phenomenal of some of the things that it can do, some of the questions that it can answer. I think we're starting to see it on the contract side, the legal side. We're seeing it in pre-con and takeoff, and estimating to some regard. I think it's here to stay for sure. I think it's going to, hopefully, I would love to see it start to fill a little bit of that void that we have in the need for labor. So I think it could be really, really advantageous for construction.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I agree. So to ask kind of the question that I think lurks in the back of a lot of people's minds with AI is how is the perceived threat level, where should that actually rank? Is it super threatening? Is it coming for, everybody's job and we're going to be run by the machines, or is it on the other side, just going to augment different stuff and everybody's okay, calm down? We're kind of in that range. Do you see it?
Yeah, I like the comment that I've heard a few times now, which is like, your job's not going to be replaced by AI. It's going to be replaced by the people using AI, right? Like the people who are willing to leverage it and adopt it, those are the people who are going to be stronger. I mean, I think it's just like anything else that we've run into. There's a lot of elements of like ChatGPT, for an example, is it's like the new version of Google. And if you're not willing to go out and Google the things that you need or go out and find the information you need, I think ideally for me, where AI really starts is it's going to start hopefully replacing kind of those low level tasks that we've ultimately needed to replace for a long time. I think, hopefully maybe some of the more dangerous tasks, I think technology can kind of, through robotics and other things, can start to replace more of the dangerous tasks that we really probably shouldn't have people focused on it anyway. But no, I think it's more of an augmentation and adding to what we do, hopefully, than it is actual replacing the creativity and the stuff that we need from our people day to day. Hopefully refocusing our people a little bit too, right? Like I don't want my best people doing a lot of like data entry and like little task oriented things. I want them focused on more high payoff activities for us. And to me, that's where AI gets us. It gets our really smart people focused on really smart things, not doing kind of the more task oriented things.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I think it should be liberating and allow people to tap into that more creative side, is what you said, of doing the stuff that people are really good at and machines are not. Machines can only do what you program them to do, and they don't see the creative solution or factor in the risk that is needed into that. Sometimes you gotta take a chance of, on paper this looks like a dumb decision, but I think it's going to pay off.
That's a great point. Well, and I kind of went down the risk path, right, of like the dangerous job site things with the robotics and that, but there are also these like high risk things that we do within the office, right, where ultimately a computer probably can, enter a bunch of data better and more accurately than I'm going to. So let it do that stuff that I don't do that well anyway, right? So I think it has its place. I think the biggest thing we can do is be paying attention to it and make sure that we're leveraging it. I think that's the biggest thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, very nice. What are some big ways that companies can minimize their risk then?
I think some of it is just it's moving away from our old processes and procedures. I think anything that we can ultimately get off paper or get off of our error-prone Excel spreadsheets. I think leveraging technology to the best ways possible, I think, is the biggest thing that we can all be doing. I do think that there is some level, just to flip back a little bit, is documenting a little bit of what we do. I think I see a lot of in construction. One of the things that we do a lot is we just kind of trust individuals to operate the way that they operate. And I think starting to see it more like systematization and those kinds of things, putting process behind what we do. I think those two things combined with leveraging technology, hopefully kind of reduce some of the risk and the things that we run into.
Mm-hmm. What do you see as kind of that next step, the next evolution, if you will, in the industrialization of construction?
I think for me, the first step is really, I'm excited just for everybody to start to get up to speed. Like, I think we have a lot of smaller companies in construction that are really just on the cusp. And so I'm really excited about that. I think we also have a really nice cohort of folks within the construction industry that are really pushing the envelope. So I think we'll continue to see AI adoption be a huge deal. I think there's a lot that's starting to happen with like virtual reality and augmented reality. And we're really starting to push the envelope with some of that and what it looks like from the design side. I think the Internet of Things and how that's going to start to impact the safety of job sites and wearables and kind of what we do from that perspective will be pretty huge. I do think robotics is an interesting one. I think there are a lot of things within construction where we do have some pretty high risk scenarios and situations. So I am really excited kind of to see where we can go with robotics and what's going to happen there as well. So,
mm-hmm. So you mentioned several different trends there. Do you see one kind of catching on steam quicker than the others to reach the critical mass?
I don't know that there's like any one silver bullet that I would say. I think it's really kind of the combination of all those things starting to come together. The more data that's available, they all kind of power each other, I think, to some regard. So, I think it's how do we best leverage all these different technologies together to get the end result? I would love to think that there's just one that's going to like come on and solve the supply chain issues that we have, and are going to solve the skilled labor shortage, and that are, going to fix all these things. But I think it's just looking at all of them together. And truthfully, the end result's probably not even any of the ones that you and I are talking about today, right? It's all those things come together as we're all paying attention to it, as we sort of breed innovation in the industry. I think there's a lot of things that are going to start to come up over the next few years that there are things that we're not even looking at or thinking about today that'll maybe have the biggest change. So I think we just have to kind of keep an open mind to it and be looking for those things, not get stuck in kind of our old way of doing stuff. And I think all of it will kind of change over the next few years. So, yeah,
I think so. You brought up the silver bullet. I agree that there's no one kind of technology that is the silver bullet. If there is such a thing as a silver bullet, I think it comes down to the mindset shift that we talked about earlier, of being open and changing the kind of closed off, we've always done it this way mentality, flipping that on its head and being, no, we're totally open to trying new things. We're going to take that risk. We're going to put ourselves out there, be willing to learn when something is going to fail, because nobody bats 100. And so that's okay. And to kind of give grace with that. And it's a big mindset shift in general, but especially in construction industry that hasn't historically adopted that mindset. But that's where the innovation really starts to take root and flourish.
It is. I think we can't be afraid of it. I think we have to be a little careful though too, right? Is like, we can't just change to change. Like, we have to have a reason behind it. And I think that, making sure that we know why we're doing the things that we're doing, and being open to those things. I don't just want us to change for the sake of change. Like, we need to keep the things that make us really good and really strong, but also be kind of keeping that open mind, as we do it as well. Right.
Yeah. One of my favorite illustrations is when two people come up to a fence and one person looks and is like, let's take the fence down. We got to take down all the barriers and charge forward. And the other person's like, well, wait, before we take down the fence, let's figure out why they put the fence there and see if it's a good reason. If it was good, let's keep the fence. If it's bad, there's a cliff on the other side.
Right. There's a reason.
Let's keep the fence up. So I agree. There's a yin and a yang. Of you got to push the boundaries, but take the time and think through, why do people put this in place, and does it make sense still to keep it? Might have made sense to start that process 10 years ago, and now times are different. Their technology has totally changed in the last decade, and it's time to kind of re-up.
Well, I think that it brings up kind of a whole nother point too, is spending the time up front to sort of like understand why. I think too often we kind of get in this mindset where we're like moving, like we think innovation is just moving faster, and sometimes it's like actually slowing down and asking the right questions. And I think that's something too that if we can spend a little time like building the foundation and asking questions, doing the right things, understanding our people and why they're doing things the way that they do them, I think we can build off of it, and not just always be kind of head down and running as fast as we can at it too. So,
yeah, absolutely. So what does innovation mean to you then?
I think innovation for me is it's tough. I think in our industry, a lot of times we think it's the crazy out there, like over the top ideas. For me, innovations, it's the little changes that we make every day just to make ourselves better. Right. It's like, it's looking at everything with, again, that kind of open mindset, and just figuring out like, how can we just change this? How can we tweak this just a little bit? Like, innovation doesn't have to be the massive, like, we completely change the company overnight. It's how do we evolve the company over time? I think it's keeping an open mind. I think it's looking for better ways to do things, and just kind of making that incremental change that hopefully kind of drives us all forward.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, absolutely. Those little 1% tweaks added on top of each other creates a huge, uh, just groundswell of change over the long run.
The old adage, right? Like if I can just be like 1% better every day, right? Like I get a lot better over the course of a year, over 5 years,
right.
whatever. So those little changes.
That's how progress is made.
Yeah, you bet.
Yeah. So how do people find out more on what you're doing and connect with you?
Yeah. So always love talking to people in the industry that are interested in making change or adding technologies or making themselves more efficient. So they can find me at A Henderson. They can email me at ahenderson@stackct.com. They're welcome to check out Stack at stackct.com. Always more than happy to connect and talk with folks.
Awesome. Well, last question for you. If I could give you all power to snap your fingers and innovate one thing in construction, what would you choose to innovate?
Oh man. That's a big question, Todd. I think it would just simply be like, I want to just see us be better as an industry, right? Like, I don't know that it's any one innovation I want to see change. I just want everybody coming in every day, just going, how can I make construction better? So for me, it's like, it's more of a mindset shift than it is about like a big innovation that I could make. So I think that's the big change I would make is just like, how do we make construction? How do we move from the bottom of that McKinsey scale to the middle or to the top of that McKinsey scale? Like we have such an awesome opportunity within construction of where we can take it and what we can do. So for me, it's just if we could figure out how to get the industry behind that shift, that's I think what would make that's the thing I would get the most excited about.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a good one. And like we talked about at the beginning, I think that the tide is changing on that for sure, and it is leaning over into that direction. So you might not have to wait too long for that finger snap. Yeah. Well, Aaron, thanks so much for taking the time. I really enjoyed the conversation.
Yep. You too, Todd. Thanks.